Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming. We've got brochures for the program right there on the second bench. If you don't have a brochure and you want to pick one up and glance through it. Professor Carpenter is modeling well, not being shy about coming for the cookies. We've got a whole platter of cookies, so feel free to come right up. We are here to start the process, or to continue the process, hopefully, of getting up to speed on a very important field for the graduates of law schools, and an increasingly important field for graduates of St. Thomas Law in particular, because as you know, we are launching new degree programs in the field of organizational ethics and compliance. One of what put this on our radar screens is meeting alumni from our law school who are already working in compliance, even though we really didn't do anything explicitly tailored toward them. So figuring out what could we actually do if we started explicitly tailoring our offerings for graduates who want to work in the field of ethics and compliance. So we have, I'm not going to talk much today. We've got a very distinguished panel of law alumni that I'll just let them get up one after the other, spend 4 or 5 minutes giving an overview of what they do, what's important in their job, what compliance is, right, starting with the basics, and then we'll open it up to questions after they've all had a chance to share about their own work experience. So let's start with Andrew Gunter, who's from Target, and then we'll go to Justin Winshuttle, who from U.S. Bank, then Katie Rios from U.S. Bank, then Andrea Smith, who works in the University of Minnesota's athletics department, and then Jenny Losi, who has a lot of compliance experience, and recently she was general counsel at the Center for Diagnostic Imaging, and now just recently became general counsel at Hazelden. So let's start with Andrew Gunter from Target. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. As Dean Vischer mentioned, I am at Target Corporation. I've been there for about 4 years. I actually started in law school in the law clerk program, which unfortunately is no longer in existence. They recently cut the whole program during the last round of layoffs, which is very unfortunate because I thought it provided a lot of value to the corporation and to students that were a part of it. I'll give a quick background on my experience at Target and then dive into a little bit more detail about what I do at Target. During the clerk program, I really focused on just a lot of memos, 50 state surveys on a lot of regulatory matters. During that experience, I gained a lot of insight into processes that Target has and also what laws impact Target on the retailer sense and also the banking side of the business. I was afforded a unique opportunity that a couple people were going on maternity leave after I graduated at Target and was able to work as an associate counsel for about 4 or 5 months. This was unique because Target does not hire new attorneys for the law department. They do, however, hire new attorneys for compliance. So I was able to take the next 4 months working in the associate counsel position and kind of start networking my way across Target to see what positions could be available for someone in my position. I was fortunate enough at the time that Target was beginning their expansion into Canada and they were positioned to open up on the Canada compliance team. In that role, I supported healthcare, property development, merchandising, marketing, and supply chain, just a few small categories, and help them understand what are the laws and regulations that they need to be aware of for their launch into Canada, and it helped them develop processes and procedures to be compliant when we go into Canada. So really it was looking at, okay, we have the law that was provided to us. We have processes that we use in the U.S. How can we use those same processes? Do we need to evolve those processes? Do we need to go deeper? Do we need to create something new? And it was very much a consulting type role of working with the business compliance teams, or just the business teams in general. Starting in February of 2013, I was promoted to my current position of manager of one of the domestic compliance teams. My team is called the Program Structure and Metrics team underneath Compliance Governance, and we're part of the Corporate Compliance and Ethics Department. CCE, Corporate Compliance and Ethics, really focused on the oversight function of compliance at Target. So Target is set up in a federated model of compliance, which means we have compliance teams embedded throughout the organization, roughly 16 different teams. You have food safety, product safety, healthcare compliance, banking compliance, information protection. All these different compliance teams are throughout the organization that are embedded in each business but are not necessarily talking to each other or have a centralized reporting structure. CCE's purpose is how do we provide oversight of that structure and then report that up to the Chief Compliance Officer, who will then report up to the board and the audit committee. One of my key roles is to make sure that the Chief Compliance Officer has that connectivity between each one of these compliance teams to understand what are their key risks and what are their key procedures that they are doing to comply with those risks. Another part of the job would be what are the tools and resources those business compliance teams need to drive compliance. A big portion of that is we're trying to launch what's called a governance risk compliance software application or software tool called Archer. There's probably about 16 different applications out in the business that do similar work. We've chosen Archer and we're trying to roll that out, which involves a lot of standardization, a lot of networking, a lot of consensus building to try to drive a one-tool solution for an entire organization. Finally, my team, I lead a team of 4 or 5, and we are really focused on helping teams understand what are their legal obligations, how do they comply with those obligations, and then handing that over to another team that will then help them build their processes and procedures to comply with those organizations, to comply with those obligations. That is, in general, what I do. It's each day is a little bit unique. I love my job. I am not an attorney at Target, but I do draw on my attorney background every single day. I say really what compliance is, to go back to Dean Vischer's question, is it's a connection point between the law department, the compliance teams, and the law department, the business teams, and the audit department. Is that we have the law, we need to comply with it, we know that, and law will give us that interpretation. Just by handing that over to the business, a lot of times they do not get us there. And compliance helps build that bridge, build that network of helping the business really understand what they need to do and how to build a better program. While at the same time, how do you drive that monitoring and oversight and drive that up so it's visible at a executive leadership level? Thank you.
Okay, Justin?
Well, I'm Justin Winshuttle, and I'd like to start by welcoming you and thanking you for the opportunity to talk today. It's nice to look out here and see a number of familiar faces of different professors I had when I was here at the law school. I graduated in 2005, so I was the second class. It's hard to believe that so much time has passed since I graduated, but it's fun to come back in this capacity and share a little bit of information about what it is that I do, in the off chance that it might be something that you similarly could find interesting. So I'm going to actually start kind of from the beginning of what my career looked like when I left law school, because I think that I'll be able to provide a little bit of insight about a couple of different roles in compliance. For the majority of my career since I finished law school, I worked for the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. And so I can give a little bit of perspective with regard to sort of the government side of compliance. So when I started at the Federal Reserve Bank, I started as an assistant bank examiner in the consumer compliance function. So basically what we did was we were teams of examiners who would travel to different financial institutions, look at the different products and services they had, figure out what regulatory requirements would apply to them, and make sure that they were complying with them. And I think that you raised a good connection between really what the role is and what compliance is. There's laws and regulations that come out that banks, for example, in my instance, are expected to follow. Well, they may get the information, but maybe there's something lost in the translation. They're not quite sure exactly what it is that they need to do to comply with it. They misunderstand the regulatory requirements. They need a little bit of guidance. And so very much like you mentioned, compliance is really where the rubber meets the road. It's where you're really taking a look and you're testing and you're looking in depth to see if not only are they complying with a regulatory requirement that's really important for them to follow, but do they have maybe an infrastructure in place too, some different controls and things like that that can help them lead to compliance. So at the Federal Reserve, I spent about 7 years there in progressive roles. Went from sort of knowing virtually nothing about banking other than a few select laws and regulations, courtesy of Elizabeth Schultz and banking law, which I heard that's going to be resurrected next year, I think. So take that by all means. It was really a very pivotal point in my law school career because I really thoroughly enjoyed that class and thought, wow, this is really something that I might be interested in. And lo and behold, about 10 years later, that was indeed the case. So at the Federal Reserve, I started off knowing very little. I learned a lot through various apprenticeship sort of setups at the Fed, classroom training, on-the-job training. And I got to the point where I was running examinations and was a commissioned bank examiner for the Federal Reserve System, where I was authorized on behalf of the Federal Reserve System to write and issue reports in my name. The most recent couple of years at the Fed, I served as a legal and compliance senior risk specialist with oversight of U.S. Bancorp. So I did that for a couple of years. Really unique sort of change of opportunities. When I first started my career, it was on very small financial institutions, and it kept sort of ratcheting upward to where I got to see a lot of very unique things at very large financial institutions, because the large financial institutions really do shape the direction of the financial services industry. New products, new services, things that really innovate the industry. Those oftentimes, in the vast majority of cases, originate at the large financial institutions and then trickle down to smaller organizations. I left the Federal Reserve sort of unexpectedly. I received a job offer that I couldn't pass up to work at U.S. Bank. I've been there for approximately a year. And I'm going to try not to steal too much thunder because Katie actually works in the same area as I do, so I think that we'll be able to give slightly different perspectives with regard to what our roles are. So I was brought to U.S. Bank in order to build out a compliance testing function. Some of you maybe have heard about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which has a very dominant presence in the financial services industry as we're sort of on the heels of the financial crisis that we've experienced over the last 5-6 years. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has really brought a whole new face to consumer protection. The rules have changed. The ways that the regulators look at regulations and laws has really changed. It's much less bank, you better comply with this requirement because you don't want to have to pay all this money to these consumers, which could lead to financial instability at the bank. It's not just to protect the bank anymore. It's really to protect consumers and make sure that they're getting a fair glimpse at what a product or service is or what those different attributes are. So with that, I was brought to the bank to build out what's called a targeted testing function. So really, it's looking at compliance risks across the bank. It's learning from other things we see in the industry. If we watch the newspapers really carefully to see if another financial institution is in trouble for something, you better believe that we're going to look then and see if we're similarly at risk for something like that. The teams that I have built have been focused on really assessing in more real time what the requirements or what risks are out there in the financial services industry. I think compliance has really changed a lot in banking in the last even 10 years since I started in my career. It used to be sort of a very check-the-box type of thing, like, you're not supposed to discriminate against people in lending. Well, we're going to just check the box and say that the disclosure looks okay, so we're fine. Well, it's now much more transactional in nature, where people will look, where we're expected to really look at the whole life cycle of a loan, of a product, of a service, to really make sure that the customers have been treated properly throughout the whole transaction. So currently at U.S. Bank, I manage a team of about 105 people. I have 7 direct reports right now. My teams are designed based on key business lines throughout the bank. So I have a testing team that's wholly committed to testing compliance with U.S. Bank home mortgage, so the mortgage industry, which continues to face a lot of scrutiny, consumer lending and deposits. So if you open a deposit account at a bank, a checking account, making sure that you're getting all the disclosures you need and that you're not being charged fees unfairly, and those types of things. Other ones, I oversee wealth management, security services, payment services, credit card operations, both retail for consumers and small businesses and corporate credit cards, residential default. It's a big thing, with foreclosures that have occurred in the industry, making sure we're treating people fairly and properly and being straightforward even if they aren't making payments and we ultimately have to take their homes back. Very interesting. My work is every day is totally different from what I thought. I have a list oftentimes of things that I am planning to accomplish in that day, and I rarely get to it, and oftentimes have things added to the list. Really great use, I think, of the skills that I learned in law school. Organization writing is just imperative given the audiences that I work with on a day-to-day basis, the messages I need to communicate. I think learning to read laws and regulations very carefully is very critical in compliance, because you're very much doing those types of things where you're taking that regulatory requirement, you're figuring out how do we test for that, how can we best assure that the bank or the business line is complying with that requirement. Just in closing, again, I'm really happy to be here. I have, experience in my career, both on the government side and on the private side too. They both have been very fulfilling and really rewarding. I would encourage you to really pursue, if you have any interest in compliance whatsoever, which I think you do because you're in the room. Very viable career path, very interesting, lots of opportunity for change, and lots of great job career opportunities out there. So, thanks.
Thanks, Justin. Katie?
Hi, I am Katie Rios, and I'm from the class of 2012. I am one of the individuals who works under Justin. I work very specifically on one of Justin's testing teams. Since I graduated in 2012, I was working on the mortgage default testing program at US Bank, which obviously has been a big area since the recession. There's a lot going on with state foreclosure laws, redemption eviction laws, HAMP, which is a Making Homes Affordable program under the Obama administration. As Justin mentioned, now the CFPB is coming up. So it kind of is changing how we're testing, how we're looking at accounts. We're not just looking at accounts to see, did we have the ability to foreclose? Do we follow all of the foreclosure laws in this state to be able to do this? Now it's really looking at what was the customer experience when they called the bank. Were we looking to see, did we call them back? Did we provide them with the information that they were asking for? So it's kind of starting to look at that consumer side as well. I am recently going to be going to a new role starting tomorrow on our bankruptcy testing team. So that's going to be a new team that's being built out to test for U.S. Bank's compliance with the Federal Bankruptcy Code, local rules, lots going on with third-party vendor management. So as an institution, we have outside local counsel that's filing documents for the bank, so making sure that they're following all rules and regulations, and that we've got a robust compliance program overseeing our third-party vendors as well. I would definitely second Andrew's comment about compliance is really, here's a legal memo, here's a law that matters, but as a compliance professional, your job is really being on that front line and building a relationship with your business line and making them understand this is important, and this is, we're seeing some gaps in maybe your policies or procedures or some of the things you're doing. Let's try to build a stronger program, not just for your business line or for our compliance department, but for our company as a whole, because we all work together, we all work at the same company, same board reporting, same earnings. So it's just really getting on that level and being able to explain and understand that important piece. I started at the bank right out of law school, so as a 3L I did a lot of networking, network with people who you don't think you should be networking with. My best friend from high school worked at US Bank in the marketing department, and she really liked US Bank and was like, yeah, you've got good experience, and she helped me meet other people internally within the company that helped me get to where I am. I'm really passionate about banking law and compliance, as Dean Bisher and Justin will probably tell you. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I love talking about banking and compliance.
Andrea?
Hello, I'm Andrea Smith. Thank you very much for having me here. I have kind of a completely different compliance job than these other people have spoken about. I work in NCAA compliance at the University of Minnesota, and they're kind of in their athletic department. We actually report to the Office of General Counsel as sort of a way to create a separate line of reporting so that the athletic director, if he gets mad that we're trying to be compliant, that he doesn't fire us all. So we report to OGC, which is really good, and different college athletic programs do it different ways. Some are all within the athletic department, so your AD would have oversight over you if you worked in compliance, and some don't. We have a bit of a history at the University of Minnesota with our men's basketball and women's basketball program, so that's kind of why things have changed. And that also kind of really expanded compliance, I will say, especially for the University of Minnesota, but over the last 10, 15 years in college athletics, compliance has really been a big component of college athletics, and jobs have really expanded. I have a JD, obviously, and there's one other person in our office that has a JD. My boss does not, and another coworker does not. But it's definitely becoming something and I've been on many search committees, whenever we're looking at applicants, do they have a law degree, do they have college athletic experience? Those are really kind of the two things we look at, and specifically compliance. So it's really helpful, I think, to have a law degree and working in the area that we do. What I do day to day is I'm analyzing the NCAA manual. So we might not have legal implications of when rules are violated. There's not really a legal implication. It's really an NCAA issue. But we're constantly looking at the manual. What does this rule say? How does it apply to this situation? Every single day, many times a day, coaches or student athletes, staff have questions about what they can and can't do. And it's our job to really advise them of what is permissible, what is not permissible. Oftentimes they ask us, is this legal? And I will say, well, it doesn't really matter if it's legal, but the NCAA says that you can. So that's kind of how they view us and our role. I will say sometimes it can be a little challenging. Just the idea of compliance is that maybe you're restricting what they want to do. Coaches have pretty stressful jobs, and oftentimes the higher level programs are, there's a lot of money involved, and so it can be kind of, you have to really learn to develop a relationship with them. And that's one of the things that I have learned in my job, is how do you develop relationships where they trust you, that even if you're telling them that they can't do something or they shouldn't be doing something, that they still trust that what you're saying is really the right way to go, is really the right behavior to have. And other things that I do is we work a lot with, if I can get into the day-to-day kind of minutia of what I do, we work a lot with recruits. So I'm evaluating recruits and prospective student athletes, as we call them, to make sure that their academics are in order for when they come into college. Other things that I do is that I kind of enjoy, because it's kind of like with my legal background, is writing self-reports. So we do, when we're definitely going to have violations. Every program has them, but it's how you deal with them, and we report our violations. And so you have to write up kind of like a legal memorandum to the NCAA about what happened and how you handle the situation. Other things that I do are waivers as well. So if we come across a situation where a student athlete would be ineligible for whatever reason, but there may be some extenuating circumstances as to why they're ineligible, I would write a waiver to the NCAA, and that's what I really enjoy is because I get to advocate on behalf of somebody and kind of explain how maybe this situation is unique and what the right outcome should be. And we do auditing, we do monitoring, we look at phone calls of our coaches. I don't particularly do that, another person does in our office, but that's kind of what you do. You have to look at the phone records for your coaches to make sure that they're not calling recruits too early, that they're not text messaging them when they shouldn't be. So that's kind of the day-to-day that we do. I would say that the reason I got into compliance was because I was really passionate about college athletics. I was a student athlete at the University of Minnesota, played softball there, and so I had that background when I came into law school. And then when I was here, I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do? And I did get an internship in our compliance office, and that was probably the only thing besides being a student athlete that I had on my resume that really helped me get a job when I decided to get into compliance. Originally out of law school, I was a work comp defense attorney. Kind of got into that weird path, and it was definitely a different path that I thought I would take. It was a really good experience. Something I never thought I would do would be to, be a lawyer and go take depositions and do things like that. But then when I wanted to get into compliance, when I wanted to get into college athletics, compliance was the avenue for me, just with my background. And so that really helped me to get that experience when I was in law school. Even if it was just a year, it was really what got me my first job. And so I ended up moving to California to work for a university there for 8 months. And then a job at the U of M opened up. So another thing about college athletics, if you're interested in that, is to be mobile. Think about the different divisions as well. I work in Division I, but that's primarily because that was my experience. Division II and Division III, they do have compliance people. However, depending on the college, they could be also a coach, or they're going to have other responsibilities in the athletic department than just compliance. At the Division I level, you're going to see more compliance departments that have just compliance people. Within the Big Ten conference that we're in, Ohio State, they have, I think, like 20, close to 20 compliance officers. We have 5. So it tells you, the differences that are out there. I think that's it.
Okay. Thanks, Andrea. Jenny.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you again for having us all here. I'm very humbled to come back to speak with our prospective students and some friendly faces as well. My name is Jennifer Losey. I'm the general counsel at Hazelton Betty Ford Foundation. In my current role, I have 3 departments that report to me. Well, actually 4 if you count privacy, but legal and privacy, standards and compliance, and health information technology. In my previous role at Center for Diagnostic Imaging, I also had risk management that reported to me. I have a little bit of a different experience than the others that have spoken. I'll try not to reiterate some of the things because I think they've conveyed a lot of really good information. But in healthcare, compliance is so important. Every single patient encounter, every single bill is an opportunity for a compliance incident of some sort. And so, you'll see a lot of these dual relationships, especially in legal and compliance in healthcare, because of kind of the evolving nature of compliance. So people ask me a lot about how I got into this position, and it's really by happenstance. I took advantage of some very innocuous-looking opportunities along the way. I started out at Center for Diagnostic Imaging in the government relations department, doing project-based work where I did bill writing, or I attended agency representation meetings, giving presentations on how laws were going to affect stakeholders in the community. And that, when I graduated from law school, then morphed into an actual attorney position at CDI. From there, as CDI began to grow, so did my responsibilities, and I eventually took on the responsibility of compliance and then risk. And so at the end of the day, I was wearing 3 very big hats. But and the same is true at Hazelton as well. As Hazelton grows, we're just seizing these opportunities along the way. One of the areas that I wanted to speak to that really hasn't been spoken to today is about the hiring process. I've been in the position to hire compliance officers at both CDI and at Hazelton now. And when we were going through the hiring process at CDI, we went through this very long vetting process and had lots and lots of applicants. And what we realized was the certifications were not enough. Even a lot of people with a lot of experience in compliance was just not enough. When they presented, their communication wasn't quite there. When we asked for written examples, it just wasn't quite right there. So we actually ended up sort of backing into the JD. at CDI, they did not previously have a compliance department. So it's part of the legal department. And so when we're looking at our candidates pool, we decided that based upon the caliber of person that we needed, communicating the level of information that needed to be communicated, that we really needed somebody with those level of skills. The same is true at Hazleton. That compliance department is actually quite a bit bigger than at CDI, even though CDI is a bigger company. But we are looking at, it used to be filled with clinicians, behavioral health and substance abuse clinicians. Somebody joked to me that it was where failed clinicians went to die, was in compliance. I took a little offense to that, but what we have now, what the team is now, is a very strong, skilled group of people who can speak to the regulations, but also be that business partner to the business units. We one of the commonalities between Hazleton and CDI is that we are very geographically spread out. So at CDI we had, centers in Maine and Florida, Seattle, and Southern California and Arizona and everywhere in between. And at Hazleton we have 16 sites as equally as geographically dispersed. So you need to, we needed to be very skilled in our state-by-state research, having a team, a dynamic team, because there's only, the law departments were very small, a team to answer questions as they came up, whether it was on Eastern time or it was on Pacific time, or we're 24 hours a day, so it's, middle of the night even as well. So, that's kind of my perspective that I'd like to bring with you today is, when you're looking at these small opportunities, they may grow into bigger opportunities. I think that's kind of an outside the compliance spiel as well, but just one that I'll put out there. And then I'm a little bit different from the rest of the folks here as well, because I'm speaking to you from a healthcare perspective. The healthcare perspective on compliance is very integral to everything that we do. We're basically governed by a very complex and sometimes not very cohesive set of state and federal laws, and governed by several federal agencies at one particular time. So if you're thinking about healthcare as a particular area of study, really seriously consider compliance. You'll be able to use your JD every single day. The skills that you earn here will do you well in healthcare.
If I could ask all 5 speakers to come up front. Since we're recording this, we want everybody to speak into the microphone, and I would just want to field questions, and then whoever wants to jump in on an answer can do so and just speak into the microphone. So, questions for the distinguished panel. Professor Wiebe.
Courses in athletic coaching as well as compliance as part of the MLM.
Thank you. We'll get back to you on that. The other questions.
Is there a specific type of undergraduate background that is required to go into compliance? Is there something more where you look for somebody with a background in finance or banking as like a non-traditional student, or is any type of career, be it from political science to a philosophy undergrad, acceptable?
I'm going to repeat the question for purposes of the recording. Are there any particular undergrad backgrounds that are required for particular compliance careers?
I'll go quickly and everyone else can. Well, my undergraduate degree was in English and music, so I would say no. I went to law school for terrible reasons and luckily came out finding something I enjoyed. One of the things I think is just so critical in any job is, especially in compliance, is the ability to articulate yourself both orally and in writing. And I would say that my English degree was very critical even in helping me be successful in law school.
I would agree with what Justin's stated. It's probably more about how you present yourself. Make sure that your written materials are good. I mean, that's just a basic. It just sounds like a basic, but it's not. I've looked at hundreds of compliance and legal resumes, and they're just not. Some of them are just not good. I would think, though, that in healthcare, sometimes English or even like a biology or chemistry or something like that is preferred.
For me, in college athletics, I got a degree in sport management and then a master's as well in that. And so I had that background. I think just for if you're looking to get into compliance, really what we would be concerned about is, do you have some sort of experience? So it doesn't really matter what your undergraduate degree was in, but did you get some experience while in law school or while in college that can relate?
I'll add one more piece to that, but agree. I was an economics poli-sci major in undergrad, and I don't think I've really used it too much thus far in compliance, besides knowing how is a bill made a bill, thanks to Schoolhouse Rock. Thank you, Julie. You showed that to us year one, like second day of class. So I think really what's important is, was spoken before, was what you've gained from the law. Studying law is how to read a bill, how to read a regulation, how to analyze, how to read a case. And in the writing piece of it, it's amazing how much I have to stress to my team how important writing and being professional is. You are representing yourself, the team, and on top of that, the organization, whenever you're meeting with anyone within the corporation or externally. And so what you're gaining from law school is a lot of those skill sets, and I think that's really what you can pull from.
Professor Schultz.
I always love Justin's story of starting out as a bank examiner and ending up where you know, talking about someday landing it. I'd be curious to hear from the rest of you, especially in terms of hiring. To what extent does some kind of experience with a governmental agency make somebody attractive as a compliance person? And does it have to be your industry-specific experience, or might experience in a different agency help? And also, if you were trying to hire people, how would some kind of government experience rank as opposed to maybe doing a judicial clerkship? People are thinking of trying to get in. I'm just trying to think of other places to start out that might help you get into compliance.
So the question is, how relevant is government experience, and is it only relevant if it's in the particular regulated field in which you want to enter compliance? And how would you rank general government experience versus judicial clerkship experience, for example?
Well, I'll jump in here. From a healthcare perspective, government experience is very helpful, whether it be at the state level or at the federal level, but probably only to the extent that it's within those areas that we interact. You know, IRS type service may not be helpful in healthcare context, but that would definitely jump out to me, as opposed to a judicial clerkship or something.
I agree. I mean, given my experience working for a governmental agency prior to joining the private sector, has been incredibly useful. A lot of that is because at U.S. Bank, we spend a lot of time thinking about what the regulators are thinking about, because we need to try and be one step ahead in terms of what the issue of the day may be. It's, you know, one of the things that was really very interesting and unique from the very start of my career as an assistant bank examiner at the Fed, I was sort of thrust in front of bank CEOs and presidents, which was a very unique opportunity to work with people who have, in many cases, decades of experience, when I knew that I knew less than them, but it just gave me a really great opportunity to interact with those people. And similarly, when I was working at the Fed and working on U.S. Bank matters, you know, I was regularly talking with the executive management team and the CEO of the bank regarding different issues. I can't think of very many other opportunities that I could have had that would have put me in connection with those people so early in my career. It's just very interesting. So there's also a lot of hiring going on at the federal regulators for banking as well. So another opportunity.
Well, I don't think my area is really as relates, but I can say you know, the NCAA is our governing body, and there are opportunities to work for the NCAA that do translate well. We recently hired somebody who had that experience. He doesn't have a law degree, but he worked for 6 years at the NCAA. So for us, that was really good experience and a unique perspective that we could bring into our office, so that when we talk to him, he knows what the NCAA is thinking, or he knows the people there, and so it can kind of help, you know, have us have a good relationship with them, who are, you know, our regulatory body.
Nicole.
I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about how you envision an LLM in organizational ethics and compliance helping promote the career of those that enter into the program in your specific fields, and what advice you have with regard to going this route in addition to the experiences that you have.
Good. So the question is, how can this new LLM degree in compliance help the careers of those who end up holding the degree, and is there advice for how best to leverage the value the LLM might have as folks enter the job market?
I think there might be three different ways it could really help. The first one is just understanding how compliance functions as a whole. I don't think you really get that from law school, and everything I've learned about compliance, including the history of how compliance really developed in the United States, just came from on the job and reading on my own. The second one would be really understanding how compliance operates with businesses, and also how it fits in when compared to law and audit, and the value that can drive. That is something that's taken me a significant amount of time to really understand all of that, and I think a single couple classes could really help solidify that view. The third one would be something that you just won't pick up from law school, and I'm not quite sure if they're going to be teaching it much in the LLM, but really would be regarding policies, internal policies, and how those are implemented at an organization. That is a huge part of compliance and ethics, and that's something that you typically don't get from law school and other career paths. So.
I'm going to second Andrew's comment there. If there's a class on how to write policies and procedures, I can tell you as a compliance professional, you spend time looking at them all the time. Not only your policies and procedures as a member of the audit function, but you're looking at the policies and procedures of the business line you're auditing. You're looking at legal memos coming down from the legal department, and how do I, you know, get this information and fit it into a business process. So like Andrew was saying, a lot of that is really just learned on the job your first, you know, year, 2 years. I'm still learning how to do that now. But if there's a way to streamline and really, you know, teach that and have that be a skill, as a graduate, you're going to be able to come in and say, okay, I can add value to your compliance department right now, today, because I have this skill and I know how to do this.
I'll just add quickly that I also think that networking possibilities within this program could be very useful. You know, I envision that there'll be people coming into the program from various backgrounds, some perhaps right out of school, some who have been in the industry for a while and are looking maybe to improve some of their skills in certain areas. So I think that there could be a really great cross-section of people coming together who could help give more perspective about maybe what type of career within compliance, since it's so vast, might be a good fit for someone.
Professor Oside.
I have a two-part question, and it seems like everyone is extremely satisfied with their career choice. It sounds like a really rewarding career. If I didn't love my own job right now, I'd be considering it. But I wondered if everyone could say what they find to be the single most rewarding part of their position in compliance. And second, because we emphasize work-life balance so much at St. Thomas, how you feel that your role currently in compliance fits within our mission of a work-life balance.
So what do you find most rewarding about your current position, and how does your role fit within a broader commitment to work-life balance is the question.
Yeah, we'll go on. I get to start this time? All right. Throwing me to the wolves. I think the most rewarding part of my job on the compliance side, because I have a dual hat role with legal, is I get to be the mechanism for positive change in the organization. And it's this weird dynamic that I have to play, and it's this awkward conversation. I have to say, do you want me to be the compliance officer or do you want me to be the lawyer? Because if I'm going to be the lawyer, it's going to be different than if I'm the compliance officer. And when I'm the compliance officer, I really get to partner with the business owners. We get to come up with a solution. We get to do a really different type of analysis on risk and on solutions than if I was just the lawyer. So I think that's the most rewarding part of my job. And then work-life balance, still working on it. I have worked with mid-sized organizations, not large organizations. That means that everybody puts on their hats and, does what they need to do to get things done. So still working on it, but set your boundaries, I guess, and decide that those are going to be your boundaries.
I really do like a lot of aspects of my work, but I think at its core, I am most satisfied with the opportunities to work with people. All of my various aspects of career within compliance, I've found myself working with so many people. It's people who I'm trying to teach something to, which I really enjoy. It's people who I need to report information to, I need to distill it to the key points of it. There's just so many people who are involved in all the decisions that we make, and I really enjoy that. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time necessarily thinking about what my management philosophy is, but my people on my teams come first, because if they're happy and they're satisfied and they feel valued, the work just gets done. And so that's always been sort of the forefront of what I have tried to do there. Regarding work-life balance, it varies quite a bit. I would say in my role I work more than 40 hours a week. Sometimes it's 60, sometimes it's probably not more than that, but most of the time I would say I work probably around 50 hours a week or so. I check email a lot. It's amazing the compliance crises that can come in at 10 p.m. at night. It's very odd how that occurs. Sometimes I kind of step back and try to remind people that we're not saving lives, it's compliance, it's not the ER, but nevertheless, I guess whatever's right in front of you at that time seems like the biggest issue. But I think that Jenny's absolutely right. It's about setting boundaries, determining, what you value in your life, and also in roles when you're in management, I think it's so critical to learn to delegate responsibilities. I think that my tendency, at least earlier in my career, was to hoard responsibilities for fear that something might not be done, maybe to a standard that I wanted. And when you delegate things, you run the risk that you might get disappointed at some point by somebody who doesn't do something, at the level you need it to be. But you need to trust people first and assume that the work will get done incorrectly if you provide the guidance. So that's helped my work-life balance a lot.
Coming from someone who works under Justin, he practices what he preaches. I'm really happy with my work-life balance right now. The team that I'm on it's not a position where we take work home just because we're dealing with, confidential customer information that doesn't leave the bank. If you've got work and you want to come in and do it, you can, but for the most part, it doesn't need to be taken out or taken home, so I'm really happy with that. My probably favorite part of my position is when you're testing or you're looking at an issue and you identify an issue or you identify a gap in a business line process, being able to bring that up to management and say, hey, I saw a flag on this interests me, can I dig into this a little bit more? And then, along the way you might discover, oh, we do have a gap in our process here and there's a spot where we as a bank can do better, we can build a better process, or let's start building relationships with the business line to find out more information and be able to really provide a better service, provide a better process for all of our consumers and bank customers.
When I was a work comp defense attorney, I had to bill time, and I noticed that the first thing when I got into my office, the first day on my job in compliance in California, is that I didn't have to account for every 6 minutes of my day. And that was just a huge relief for me, because it was really just, you get in and you do your work, and there are times that I, have to answer emails just yesterday I was answering emails from the baseball coach about their pass list, and but for the most part it's pretty good work-life balance. As far as what I really enjoy, I got into compliance because it was a stepping stone into college athletics, and that was really my passion. And this has really been able to combine my two interests, because the law and the legal is an interest of mine, and I did go to law school because I was interested in it in general. But now I'm able to combine both those things into my current position. So.
When I think about the three things I really enjoy about my job, I really enjoy the study of law. I still do, and it's something I still get being a compliance professional. I enjoy working with people, which has been mentioned before, and I enjoy problem solving. Especially in compliance, you're usually making problem solving to the extent that you're making positive impacts on the organization, that processes or procedures may need to change, but in the end it's going to make the organization stronger and better and more ethical or more compliant. And I find a lot of value internally with that. As for work-life balance, when I was in Canada compliance, I was doing upwards of 60 hours a week. It was a lot of business partners and a lot of moving parts, and I was very busy. It was a similar thing, though. I had to realize that certain emergencies, when you get an email at 9 o'clock, you're probably not going to solve it by 8 a.m. the next day, and trying to set that boundary for myself. In my current role, there's not a whole lot of emergencies that come at me. Most I'll do is 50 hours a week, and it's also been a learning experience of similar, as was said before, of delegating. I have a team of 4, and trusting them to do the work and following up on the work after they do it. I do not have to do everything for myself to get the job done, but I have a very talented team that can do the work, sometimes even better than I can. So, thanks.
We have time maybe for one more question. There's a lingering question. If so, I can go to the question I've wanted to ask. And that is this. You talked a little bit about what employers look for in terms of background and experience. If you could identify across the different industries that compliance works, are there certain attributes of a person that are more likely to make them successful in the compliance realm, regardless of the industry, that we may not expect coming out of a law school environment, but that you see it more in the compliance environment? If anyone has any thoughts on that.
Okay, there are a lot of attributes I think that you learn in law school that will make you quite successful in a compliance role. I think attention to detail is really critical, especially when you're in a testing capacity where you're really looking at the practice and seeing if it aligns with the regulatory requirement. I found, as my career has evolved and has changed, it's been more from a detail-oriented testing role to more of a strategic role. Now I don't test, but I determine the direction of the testing function. But bottom line, skills that are just so critical, as we've said on numerous occasions, it's writing, it's communication skills, it's that attention to detail, it's the desire to want to do things well and do things right, it's the ability to partner with people who might have differing viewpoints than you about how to solve an issue. At US Bank, it's very interesting. The conversation doesn't always stop when we say, hey, business line, you're doing this wrong. The conversation then is, okay, well, this is a revenue generator. We can't just necessarily stop offering this product. Is there a way we can change the product? Is there a way that we can amend our disclosures? Is there a way that we can be creative in order to come up with a solution that makes both parties either happy or satisfied with whatever the outcome is? So it's a lot of people skills.
I think Justin started to get into an important area of how being a lawyer fits with compliance very well, which is there's not necessarily an ability just to change like that overnight because compliance told you that it needs to be changed. And having the skills of persuasion but also understanding the viewpoint of the business owner is really key. Organization is really key as well. Having a very organized frame of reference. And I see that kind of coming out from a law degree as well, that you can be organized enough to collect your thoughts and be persuasive with the business owners to get to those creative solutions. And other than that, I'll second everything Justin said.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the exact same thing, that working with people is really important, and being able to maintain working relationships with people who may disagree with you is a skill to really value and to really develop. And I think that's something that I didn't really know much going into compliance, and now have, really learned that. And the other thing is being able to multitask. You have to be really organized, but you have to be able to multitask. I don't know if it's the same for them, but I have people coming at me from all different directions with all different problems. And so being able to, categorize and prioritize those issues and then to respond in a timely manner is really important.
I think it's tough to build on what's already said. The one piece I would add would be project management. And a lot of times when we're looking at starting a new project, compliance doesn't happen overnight. It's a long, drawn-out process. And even when you want to change a procedure, there is so many one-offs that have to go along with that. And so typically a project can last for a month to, I have one that's been going on for almost 2 years now, and it will probably continue to go on indefinitely as we are trying to drive adoption of a tool. But knowing how to manage all the different moving pieces of a project, who are the players, where they stand, how do I influence them, what tools do I have at my disposal, all go into project management. And that is something that you learn somewhat in law school just from doing schoolwork. It's how do you take that then and apply it to your work life.
Well, I've enjoyed this tremendously. One, because it helps me get up to speed on this field, but two, it's really, I think, cool to see a panel of our own alumni who are doing such great things in the field. So thank you very much.